Welcome to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Whether you're an athlete trying to perform at your best when it counts the most, a coach or business leader trying to get more out of your team, or someone looking for more personal growth, this is the place for you. This podcast is your map to guide you to the right mindset, systems, and strategies you need to become the best version of yourself. And now, here's John Cullen and Brandon Allen.
Well, welcome back to, I guess it's back because, it's been however many days since the last one, but it wasn't like we were coming from a commercial break or something. That I just want to make sure that everybody understands we're back. Like, welcome back to listening to the Mental Advantage Podcast. Brandon, I guess we should probably start with the exciting news that on Friday we are going to have an announcement. No, we're not nationally syndicated yet or anything like that, but it is a pretty cool thing that's going to be happening.
And we're not going away either. So, some people, if you remember some of the original feedback, the best part was the end.
That's true.
That's not, we're not doing that either. But no, I'm excited. Hopefully the listeners will listen to the show on Friday and kind of check it out.
Absolutely. So, guys, what we're going to do is we are going to not have a guest on Friday, which now just reduced 50% of our listening audience who just heard that. They're like, oh, well, it's just those two. I'm not listening on Friday. Basically what's happening at this point. But no, we are going to talk a little bit about the future of the show, some of the exciting things that are going to be happening, maybe what we hope is just going to be a better opportunity for you all to engage with us and us to engage with you all over social media. So we're really excited about putting together and announcing some of those plans. And then before that, though, we do have a guest today, and that, of course, is Dave and Traci Plungas, who are two unbelievably young coaches who have been doing it for a little while now, and already have had great success in the coaching ranks and are at great schools. Dave is actually the assistant head coach and defensive coordinator at Robert Morris University, and his wife Traci is the assistant volleyball coach at West Virginia University. Both of them are passionate about their jobs, care about their players. It's going to come through really clear for the listeners, Brandon, just how interested they are in wanting to do really well by their players.
For sure. And, I feel like we say it a lot, but just what they're able to do, the way that they're leading the young men and women at WVU and at Robert Morris, and the care at which they are trying to develop them individually, and the culture at those two schools is really, really awesome to hear.
Absolutely. The other thing that really impressed me was, I think came through pretty clear for us as well, is just the mutual admiration they have for each other and the great job. One of the questions I ask is, what makes the other one so good as a coach? And it was really interesting to hear those answers as they kind of broke that down, kind of the coaching game, if you will, of their spouse, which was pretty cool.
It was, and I know we touch on it a little bit, right? But it's funny to hear too. I bet that's a pretty competitive.
Yes, no doubt about it. Yeah, they lit up when we started talking about the house competitions and the friendly rivalries that probably go on there. I definitely think, and you guys will hear the story, but I can see where Traci probably gets one up on Dave, especially when they're playing her sport, which was, we shouldn't, not to spoil anything, but we shouldn't be surprised that she came out the better when they're playing her sport, for sure.
Absolutely.
Well, guys, listen, we have the announcement on Friday, so tune in for that. And then tonight, Without further ado, let's get to our conversation with Dave and Traci Plungas, two great coaches that care a lot about their players and are doing some great things at their respective universities as it relates to developing leaders, developing culture, and all of those good things. So enjoy the conversation. All right. Well, as you all heard from the introduction there, this is a unique combination we have tonight, Brandon. We have a husband and wife coaches, college coaches. And look, when I say this, it's not like just some, we didn't just get somebody who's like a manager somewhere, whatever. We have the defensive coordinator from Robert Morris University, Dave Plungas, and Traci, his wife, who actually is the assistant volleyball coach at WVU, West Virginia University. So these are two big time coaches that are going to be able to share some knowledge with the listeners tonight. So we're really excited about that. Thank you all both for taking the time to join us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be on.
Absolutely. So let's talk about this, get this out of the way. So you both met, did you meet at University of Albany? Is that where you how'd that story go?
Yes, we met at the University of Albany at a Christmas party at the baseball house.
Nice. Hey, well, Brandon and I are both former college baseball players, so
right.
There's always matches being made at the baseball house. I can tell you that. But well, that's awesome. And we've ironically, and we didn't set out to do this, but I think, and this is no lying, 45 shows. You are our fifth, I think. Together, you are fifth University of Albany graduates, believe it or not. Like, it's crazy. We interviewed Todd Setner early on, who's a U of A grad. Our very first guest ever actually was Dave Meyer, who's written a book and is an author. And he is a University of Albany grad. So I think we're definitely going to need to get some royalties from that alum chapter now that I think about it.
They're definitely doing something. So I have a quick question kind of off the bat. I'm assuming as coaches and meeting up there, y'all probably not very competitive in the household.
Very, very competitive.
Yeah, he thinks he's a better athlete than me, but I don't know.
Actually, the first time when we started dating, we were playing sand volleyball. A lot of the football guys and volleyball girls playing.
Tell him the real story.
That's what I am. And we go, I think I'm more athletic or still to this day, but we're playing volleyball and we're playing in front of all of our peers. And, I go up to spike a ball. I get set. We're playing some beach volleyball in the summer, and I get a set, and I go up to spike the ball, and then she blocks it right back in my face.
Yeah.
Nice.
Everyone lost.
I'm sure she hasn't relived that moment about a million times. Every time y'all get into that competitive discussion. But let me give you both a chance here to kind of level set things. I was thinking about this as I was preparing for the show. A little softball question to start off with is, Dave, what makes Traci such a good coach?
I think the best thing about her, and this kind of goes over to her everyday life, is how caring she is. I think she is the most caring person that I know. So I think it carries over to her girls and the programs that she's at, because obviously she wants to win, but as you guys know, to win, you have to care about the people in the program. And I think that's first and foremost.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's something that we've talked about with a lot of the coaches on the show. Traci, same question to you. What makes Dave such a good coach?
Honestly, I've never seen anyone work harder than Dave. Like from when we first started getting to college coaching, he was at RPI, and he was the first one in. He was the lowest of the low on the totem pole, and he was the first one in, last one out. Then he got his break at Albany, same thing, first one in, last one out. And now he's, just second man in charge, defensive coordinator, and he's still first one in, last one out. So
that's fantastic.
That's something to be said.
Yeah, no, look, we talk about this all the time on the show, is how important it is for coaches, especially to model for the players. And it's really hard for you guys to ask anything of the players that you're not going to do yourself. And so that's definitely something that has an impression on those players when they see you're the first one in there in the mornings and the last one. Every time they turn around, they're like, man, coach is always in the building, and that's a really key thing. So what was it about, in kind of a Cliff Notes version, if you will, but why coaching? Why did you all both decide to get into coaching?
You can go first.
Yeah, for me, I started coaching club when I was playing, and I didn't realize how much I loved it. And I thought I was going to be a teacher. Honestly, that's what my master's is in, education. And I went to grad school. My coach, MJ Engstrom, gave me the opportunity to be a graduate assistant and also like get my master's in education. So during that process, I just fell in love with it and decided master's in education, everything, but I think this is where I really want to go.
Yeah. Dave?
Yeah, for me, after I my football playing career is done in 2013 or 2012. 2013, I actually got an internship or a job at Northwestern Mutual. I was going to be a financial advisor. That's what my father is. And I got into it, went to work probably about, I don't know, probably say about 4 or 5 days, maybe a week or two. I can't remember, but I go and not that I didn't like the work. I could do the work. I love the work, but I think the thing was just being around competitive people, being around people with like-mindedness of accomplishing a goal. It was just, it was just a different environment that I didn't fit in well. And, I knew there, I'm like, hey, I have to get back to sports, and I wanted to get into sports, and I found my opportunity at RPI.
That's awesome. And, it's interesting. There's so many, when we talk to people like the sports psychologists that we talk to on the show, one of the things they always say is, I got into this kind of pathway because I needed somebody like that as a player. And I just found that that's what made me gravitate towards that. Was there anything, or how much, I guess, a better question would be, does your all's own experiences as college athletes influence the way you coach players today?
Absolutely. I think that along the way of working with different people, whether that be like other assistants or other head coaches, I've learned a lot of how I coach, like ways that I would have liked to be coached, and ways that kind of like, you learn like what you do and you don't want to do,
Yeah.
through other people. And I think that's what's been great. I've taken awesome things from everyone all the mentors that I've had. And then our worlds as coaches are so small. I mean, I have friends all across the country that, I just played, those 3 matches this weekend, and I called up, or one of my friends called me up after their match, and we just talked volleyball for a solid hour. I mean, I had quite the bus ride home.
Yeah,
so
that's
I was
right.
like, yeah, let's kill some time anyway. But we talked volleyball, and it was great. It's just great to kind of like spitball ideas with somebody else. And I know my head coach does that now. And so it's kind of the world. So yeah, I've learned a lot of things along the way.
Absolutely. Dave, how about yourself?
Yeah, same thing. I think, for me personally, like I've had a lot of inspiration. A lot of my experiences have carried over to my coaching ability and how I coach. I think the biggest thing is, just growing up from, my grade school, St. Gabe's. I remember my coach, Coach Sapanero. Me and my buddies talk about him every single day. We go back together. I talk about my high school days. I talk about my head coach, Mike Bell, at Lake Catholic in Ohio, in Cleveland, Ohio. Same thing. We talk about our experiences that he gave us as high schoolers. And then you talk about college at the University of Albany. Coach Bob Ford, who Traci knows as well, was a legend there.
Legend.
He started the program. He was there for 44 years. He retired the year after I graduated, and kind of the everything, the values and the program values, and just being a good person, the stuff that he instilled is you, that when you got there, as a young man, you really didn't know, and you really didn't realize what he was teaching you. You just wanted to play football. And then the time you left, you go, oh, that's what he meant. And
Yeah.
I think those are the things that carry over more so now for me coaching than anything else. And that's something that I appreciate more as I get older, and I try to instill that in the young men that I coach.
Absolutely. I know Brandon has something to say, but I wanted to make one quick comment, Brandon, before you do that. It's amazing. You made me think of something, Dave, that when Todd Settner was on the show, he talked about the basketball coach had been there forever and ever. And what a great thing that is for the University of Albany, that both basketball and football, 2 of their major sports, had such longevity. And you guys both know and can appreciate that as coaches, what that does for a program when you can have that kind of tenure. So that's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
Brandon?
Yeah, so I do have a question. So some of the things that you both outlined there, right, are, I think, common threads that you hear a lot from really good coaches. And it's kind of the foundation that they pass along. You guys are both very young and still early on in your coaching career. Have y'all seen a shift? Are kids challenged today with things that maybe you all didn't have to deal with as little or as few as 10 years ago? Because I know it's changed for John and I. I mean, it's changed in a big way. Social media, all of it, right? But is there stuff that you all have to do now as a coach that you didn't necessarily think maybe you would have to do, but it's just because of the way culture has changed?
You want me to go, or do you want you to go?
You can go.
Okay. I think it has changed a lot, but I do think there's the morals and the values don't change. I think that you have to keep them, because if you let those slide, and then you let people off easy, and anything worth getting is not easy in life, as you know. But I do think there is a line that where now you have social media, you have you have COVID, right? I think that's a huge issue, just of the mental aspect and the mental health of young men and young women. I think those are things that you have to deal with. Now, the thing that I didn't realize that you have to do, and as I've grown up, you guys have spoke about before we even got on about the the James Madison game in 2018, is when I got into even becoming a coordinator, it's scheme, it's caring about people. But then I think the thing that I didn't realize that you have to do more now than ever is being a sports psychologist. I talk to a sports psychologist, and Traci knows this. I talk to a sports psychologist every week just in order to prepare myself to talk to my players.
Yeah.
And I think that is so important, just how to present things to them, of thinking about, conceptually thinking about the process and how to do things the right way, rather than, when people look at social media. Another thing I get from Traci is her sports psychologist at her sports psych at Colgate, where she was previously at, would always talk about something that resonates with me is every single day you wake up, what's the first thing a young man or young woman looks at? They look at their phone. Yep. They look at the highlights of social media on a daily basis, in the morning, in the afternoon, when in between meals. And that's something that you have to fight against every year. So, gone are the days is that you say something and the kids are like, all right, you say jump, they say how high, right? You have to keep reiterating every single day of, what's right and what's wrong, because you're fighting against social media. You're fighting against things that they look at every single day. Right and wrong are indifferent. There's a lot of information out there, some good and some bad. So that's something that I've realized, daily now that you have to battle against and work with and work against. And I shouldn't say work against, I should say work with, because there's a lot of good with it too.
Yeah. Traci?
Yeah, definitely everything that Dave just mentioned, but I think another thing that, comes to the forefront for me at both the institutions that I've been at since social media and since technology keeps growing, we get everything so fast. We get information fast, and we can see everybody's lives like in seconds and, their highlights. But like, so if we are like, we have to coach that way as well. And that's something that, you didn't have to do before. It's, even when we first started coaching social media, like Instagram just became a thing. I think it was our senior year. I don't know if that dates us. So now, like, having to constantly think about that, and they want an itinerary on Monday, even though we're not leaving till Saturday, and these are just things. So it just is like changing the way we see the world so that we can put them in the best situation possible, and the best mindset possible. And because they think so fast, they also want to play fast. So getting them to be present. We use our sports psychologists a lot to just stay in the moment. Yep. Don't think about the end result yet. We're not there. We have to work towards that. And the same thing at practice is each drill, each moment we touch the ball, we need to be there,
Right.
and then continue to work towards that end result. And that's been, I think, the biggest thing that I've learned. Probably, I mean, COVID really helped with that, but and it slowed things down a little bit for everyone.
Sure.
But now I'm seeing it come back again, because life is getting more normal for now.
No, I mean, look, you brought up something. So as a mental performance coach, one of the teams I worked with for a while was a college volleyball team. And Traci, one of the challenges I found with working with them is so much of that kind of the velocity of the game and how fast it is. Like, you don't have all those times for the reset breath and to really, get yourself back to that present moment focus in between serves, because the serves are happening. It's not like in football. I mean, granted, Dave, depending on if it's a no huddle, situation or something like that, but there's at least, and I know in baseball, our sport, there's at least time to kind of gather your thoughts, which can be good and bad, right? I mean, sometimes that's more time you have to think about. You think long, you think wrong, the old Joe Paterno, thought. But the reality of it is it's really hard to get them kind of, present moment, because of the fact that it's another service ready and you don't have time. Now, all of a sudden there might be 4 serves that have gone by, and that girl she's still back on that second point of the game where she missed that dig or whatever the case may be. And it's hard. So, I mean, how are you guys kind of helping them or preparing them, if you will, on that mental side of it? I mean, and that kind of question goes to both of you, but Traci, just since you were talking about that, I'd be curious.
Yeah, I mean, like so we do have sports psychologists on staff, and that's huge. I mean, to have the resources to do that is, helps immensely.
Yeah.
And one thing that we do is we do weekly meetings with them to kind of get it to be one of the, I think the best phrase that our sports psychologist has used is we're not trying to push the problems away. We're trying to be aware of them so that we can learn from them. And I think that has been pretty much like our mantra, going in. I mean, you have a second, once the play is over, you have 1 second to literally take a breath and then be aware of what just happened, and then learn from it on the next play, and not dwell on it. And so those are things that, I mean, we use, little words here and there to help prepare them for that, so that they know that that's what that means, know. And it could just be breathe. It could be, we say reset a lot.
Yeah.
So at the end of a play, if the other team sides out, we say reset. And then that's just their way of, okay, we're aware of what just happened, and I'm going to fix it the next time. Reset.
Yeah. No, that's great. And Dave, I mentioned it, but there really is something to this, is that length of time between plays sometimes in football can be a detriment, it can be more of a challenge, I should say, just because it's longer they have to think about it, especially as things start to spiral and get out of control. The other team's making a drive on you, and, that DB still upset because you got a pass interference call that extended the drive or whatever the case may be. And, you as the D coordinator, is there, I mean, I'm wondering, I was thinking about this. I don't know if there's benefit to being up in the box or being down on the field sometimes when it comes to seeing some of that body language, happening.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's, I'm on the field. I think that's most important to be able to talk to the young men and our players on the sideline. You just don't get a feel for that. And just, I think being a coordinator, you can see a little more in the box, but I think you have to trust your other staff members to be in the box to be able to see that for you. But I think being on the field to, like Traci said, to get them to reset, to get them to do those things. One thing that we don't have the resources that West Virginia has in terms of sports psychologists, but I do every week. I talk to, like I said, I speak to a sports psychologist, and then every single Monday, and this started doing actually during COVID. I meet with our leadership group. There's a leadership group of 9 guys on defense that we have, every single grade, freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors. And I talk to them about just different variations of, what's going on, adversity of expectations versus the actual reality of things, of how you set your mental preparation to be ready for a game. Or, if, like you said, between plays, if there's 25 seconds between a play and there was just a bad play. And, one thing that we talk about, they talk about reset. We talk about a neutral mindset.
Yep.
And that's kind of the big thing in sports psychology going around right now with Trevor Moad,
Yep.
about trying to have a neutral mindset of getting to the next play. And we do a good job of that. The other thing I do is I use a lot of I use a lot of music in terms of resetting their mindset. So during COVID, if anyone heard of the Revivalist, they play a song, Keep Going.
Yeah.
And, every single meeting I'd play that song, and the song would be Keep Going, and just keep going on during all the COVID. Now the song this year is from one of my favorite bands, Pearl Jam. It's called Present Tense, and it's being in that present tense. So it's just a song to kind of get their minds going, and just thinking, hey, okay, here's the moment. This is what we have to do. We have to keep going. We have to be in the present tense. We have to do these things day in, day out.
I love that. No, and I think, and we had Grant Parr, actually, Brandon, was somebody talked about the power of music from a mental standpoint, mental performance standpoint. And he actually has, maybe something to look up, Dave. He's got a whole series of songs and stuff that are like pregame songs that are literally just musical stuff, but there's been a lot of research behind that. And even without the words, just that kind of gets people in the right frame of mind. And Traci, it's funny you mentioned that about the sports psychologist, because we had Dana Charbonneau on our show, and Dana actually brought up something that I wanted to talk to both of you all about right now, because as you just said, so often the athlete thinks, oh, I'm just supposed to push these thoughts out of my head, and not acknowledge it. They don't realize that's not good to necessarily. You're not telling, just like Dave was talking about with neutral thinking. Neutral thinking doesn't mean without thought. It just means that I'm acknowledging the thought. I'm seeing it pass. If it's a play, for example, I'm saying that play did happen, but also I'm agreeing that has nothing to do with the next play that's about to happen. And Dana said, though, something that was really interesting. She was talking about the difference between male athletes and female athletes that she works with. And she said, it starts kind of at that grassroots level, in that a lot of male athletes, as they're coming up, they are taught, suck it up, just, move forward. You got to be more mentally tough. Don't be thinking about that stuff or whatever. And then she was talking about female athletes. She said they're pleasers by nature. They've been taught to please. And so what happens with a lot of times with them is, in their mind, if they've messed up, they're not necessarily always thinking about what it's doing to them. They're thinking about, Coach Plungas is going to be upset with me, or, other coaches are going to be upset with me. So talk a little bit maybe about, and I know, Dave, you won't be able to talk about the female athlete side of it, but just that whole idea of, suck it up, and how guys just aren't used to, they think, well, mentally tough just means to push everything aside, and that's not good either.
Yeah. Just speaking from my point of view, yeah, I think a lot of guys think that. But I do think the way young men are thinking has changed, though, too, as well. I don't think it's like, I think they realize, like, hey, like this, sometimes just pushing things aside isn't necessarily the way to go. But I do think, I do think guys are going through it and changing their mindset as well, and being say, hey, mentally tough is more acknowledging, and, just saying, hey, okay, this has happened. How do I move forward? But yeah, gone are the days of the Bear Bryant days where you're just, you got to suck it up no matter what the hell is going on.
That's right.
But but I think I do see change in that, and which I think is positive, because it helps your mental aspect, because when you push things away and you let it build up, and then at the end it just kind of blows up in your face. And I think that way of thinking is kind of changed, and you see that in a lot of guys that we're recruiting now out of high school.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Traci, are you seeing that, what she reflected on there about the female athletes and being pleasers, and how they kind of will maybe internalize some of that?
Yeah, I do definitely see that. And I have seen that in some of our players across the last couple of seasons. But I think kind of like Dave's saying, I do see like a little change, and it may be because as a female, I really care about these players. And so I sit down, like Dave said, and I really, like, during the recruiting process and during like when I first got here to get to know them. One of our sports psychologists implemented tea time, which is probably one of my favorite things in the world. And it's where you just sit down one-on-one. You can talk about whatever you want to talk about. And it could be volleyball, it could be family. And it kind of fast tracked me into getting to know our team, which was amazing. And again, I think being one of the few females on staff, they will gravitate and talk to me about whatever they're feeling. And they might be like, hey, like, I just feel like I have all this pressure and I'm not performing well for you or the staff. And I think that's a huge step in the right direction, because at least they're acknowledging that that's what's happening, right? They're becoming aware. And then we can, as a staff, sit down and talk about it with that athlete. And I think that that's something that over even the last 2 years I've seen a huge change in people wanting to sit down and talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's great.
So I hear when I hear you guys talk, there's a lot of really good foundational stuff that y'all are doing on the mental side of things to help build that culture that both of your teams have. Do you find it as you're recruiting players, and you mentioned that there's some differences now, and I think coaches always tried to recruit to kids that were a good fit for the culture, right? Because the culture is kind of everything with the team. But are you finding that even during that process, does this come up at all from a how they're going to fit into the ecosystem at WVU or Robert Morris?
Absolutely. Yeah. I can tell you as a recruiting coordinator, yes. I think I haven't been on a phone call yet with a recruit that hasn't asked me what our culture is and hasn't identified like what their values are. And that's something that I can tell you from my recruiting experience many moons ago, that I did not know what my values are or were at the time. And I did not know, or I don't know if I didn't care what the culture was. It just wasn't like something that we talked about. Right. And so now those are like prime parts of our conversations from the very beginning. Like, this is what W volleyball stands for and our university stands for. And then what are you looking for? And, and what do you value? And then at the end of the call, I can be like, okay, they truly do believe this, and just the stories or the way that they act when I'm watching them play or listening to their coaches talk about them. And so, all of that aligns together and kind of helps us decide, all right, this player is perfect fit for our program, or maybe we should wait.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's good. Dave?
Yeah, I think it is uber important just for the culture and the character standpoint. It's something that we really dive into, just from, in our coaching world, calling the high school coach, calling people around them, talking to the family. You guys, everyone has seen, everyone wants immediate gratification in terms of, there's a lot of guys out there, a lot of football players that want to be able to post an offer rather than really have the offer.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
And I think it's important, like, for us, is like, a lot of guys are like, hey, coach, do I have an offer? We're like, hey, we're going to do our background check. We're going to see, first you got to check all the credentials in terms of what you do on the field, on the film, your height, weight, all that stuff. That's important. That's number one. And if you check that box, great. Then we can move forward and we can learn about each other. You can learn about us. We can learn about you. And we have to do a deep dive into their culture or into their character, and a deep dive into whether they fit into our culture. Because if they do, then it's a match. But if they don't, it could be detrimental to your program. And there's a lot of, young people that, like I said, want to get offered or say they have offer rather than want to actually do the work and want to do the grunt work it takes to be very successful in whatever they do academically and athletically. And you got to do a deep dive into that, because if you don't, our first year, when we got in late, in the 2018 recruiting class, and we had to take guys that we didn't have backgrounds on.
Yeah.
And we had to do that because in order to fill our class, and a lot of those guys didn't work out. And we learned from that, we grew from that, and we do a very deep dive into taking that into consideration of what type of character, person, family background, what's their level of success, where's their mindset at in terms of working, and that's getting to know them. But more importantly, that's doing a lot of background checks on people that know them personally as well, and that's for us.
No, listeners to this show will tell you that I'm a big fan of Urban Meyer's book, Above the Line, because I seem to quote it at least once a show, I think. And one of the things when I think about culture, I think about the line he says in the book is culture is what leads when no one's watching. It's the thing that everybody, once you've got them bought into it. And he also says in there that it's the success or failure of any program is completely dependent on what you're willing to tolerate. And I think those are things that it's, to your point, Traci, a lot of programs have the motto up on the wall, but if they're not living it every day, and they could even have their core principles up there, they might have 4 pillars of this, that, and the other. But if you don't see it, if it doesn't exist, it doesn't present itself in what they're doing from every single aspect of their practice. And one example, Dave, you recently had it was on Robert Morris Football's Instagram. You were mic'd up in a practice and you were talking about, right before everybody was huddled up, you said, relentless effort, compete, love to play for each other. And I thought to myself, that's somebody who's reinforcing those pillars. It's reinforcing, and I don't know if those are exactly your all's pillars, but that kind of mindset of this is how we do it here at Robert Morris. That's what's going to be important. And it's so critical. I mean, having that, and I have a question though about culture, because I'm curious about, Dave, you guys have been there for a few years now. Traci, I know Coach Reed's been there since 2015. Is culture ever established, or is it one of those things that you kind of almost have to continue to evolve with it because you're getting new players in all the time?
We believe with our program that culture evolves. And because again, like think about just the different generations that we were talking about. I mean, that everything was, hey, you need to be mentally tough now you need to be mentally aware. If we constantly stay with that mentally tough mindset, and that was our value and our culture, then things would be very hard, I think, nowadays. And so that's one thing that we talk about all the time. I think our number one word of our values is acceptance, because everyone is different. And culture is ever changing, but your values don't change, it's just your awareness changes, and you have to stay up to date with that. I think that's extremely important. To get the best out of every single person, you have to be able to adapt your style of coaching. You have to be able to adapt how to teach them about your culture, and what your values mean to them too.
Absolutely. Dave?
And going back, those are our core principles every day. So
that's awesome.
Every single day. That and a couple other things that I can't share here. But culture wise, it is the one thing I've learned throughout coaching is it is momentary. It happens, and you got to keep reinforcing it. Yeah. And you have to keep building it, because every single year you get a new crop of athletes, right? And you have to continue to build it. And it may be great one year, but the next year it's not. And I think agreeing with Traci, it's the values that you instill, and you have to stick to those and reinforce them. And those are your values. But it has to be from the heart. It can't just be, like you said, it can't be words on a wall. It can't be, stuff, blasted everywhere. It's got to be truthful. It's got to be genuine. And the players and the program have to know that it's something that is important to you, because if it's important to you, it will be important to them. But like everything else, it's momentary. Just like success, you have to continue to reinforce it. You have to continue to live it, and you have to continue to try and instill it in your players, and have that keep push along from your leaders to your younger classmen to the recruits coming in.
Yeah, no. And, it's a perfect segue into character, and Traci, you kind of teed this up for me a minute ago when you were talking about the values don't change. And, both of you, and I want to kind of take you back for a second. So Coach Clark at Robert Morris, Dave, says we're trying to build better men, better husbands, better fathers. And Coach Sunahara at WVU said, Traci, when he hired you in, that Traci brings great character to our program. And both of those comments really made me think about how important it is, and Dave, you just kind of touched on this, is to model it for those players. I mean, if they're not seeing it within the coaches, then it does become just empty words that are up on the wall. One of my favorite lines, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen this movie, is from a 1960s movie, Mutiny on the Bounty. And there's a great line in that movie when they're talking about Captain Bligh. It says, if character doesn't reside within the captain of the ship, then it is not on board. And it's the same thing with programs. If character doesn't reside within the coaching staff of any program, it's not on board. You don't have it. So, and also ties right in with your all's burn your boats, Dave, with the t-shirts this year. That's pretty cool. So what are your thoughts on character? I know you talked about how important it is to recruit it. How important is what I just said as far as everybody making sure you're demonstrating it and making sure that you're holding each other accountable as a coaching staff too? Because if you catch somebody doing something, it's at what you accept or promote, going back to Urban Meyer's book. And so if you're seeing that one of your colleagues is doing something the wrong way, you almost got to step in, don't you?
Yeah. I think like anything else, it is so important that that you live it. You have to live it for your own personal being, but obviously for your players in the program. But you also have to, with the characters, like you said, Coach Clark every day, since he's gotten here, is better men, better husbands, better fathers. And he has to live that standard first and foremost. And he has to instill that in myself and the rest of our staff in order for us to do it too. And you don't just do it by saying it. You don't just, it's again, like it's words on a wall, but what we do, and I know a lot of other programs do, and Coach Clark has done a great job with it, is, first year, he has this pyramid to success, like John Wooden. He was a big John Wooden guy before he got the head coaching gig. And it was a pyramid to success of how you play on the field, but also how you become a better man, a better husband, a better father. And, like first year students that come in here, first year freshmen that come in, the bottom pyramid is little things of trying to help them. How do you buy groceries? How do you pay bills? How do you do the little things off the field? The second year is, thinking about internships, maybe what your degree is getting you into. The third year is, getting into credit scores and buying houses and doing little things like that. And it kind of accumulates into, how to raise a family or, how to, like I said, buy a home when you are married, or, you have enough money to do that. So we try to create that environment for our guys, to not only say to live that standard, but to actually help them imagine, hey, this is what it takes and this is what you need to do after college, not just football, to become a better man, a better husband, and a better father.
Yeah, that's awesome. Traci?
Yeah, I think, I know this might sound silly, but one thing that we really do is we let them know we're human, as a coaching staff, and that we're going to have good days and we're going to have bad days. And that goes with culture too. But as long as our foundation is concrete, then they don't last very long. And that's the same thing with, showing them that we're human. Like I know that I went through a pretty rough patch during COVID when my grandmother passed away, and letting everyone know that, hey, I'm not okay today. I'm going to be honest. Right. And but the best part was it showed a lot about our program too, because they were there. They were one of our players. Her grandmother passed away probably 2 weeks before mine, and she was in my office, and I'm not going to lie, we were crying it out.
Sure.
And but that showing them that we're not just here to develop you as athletes, we're here to develop you as people, and we're trying to give you the resources so that you can be the best that you can be in life, and just showing them how much that we care about them and their families too. I mean, and that, Brandon asked earlier, that goes back to the recruiting process. Yeah. I mean, I was just got off a call today with our whole staff on and their whole family on. And that's important, because you need to we're not just recruiting the athlete, we're recruiting the entire family. And then they need to see that they're not just joining the head coach, they're joining an entire staff and an entire program of people that they're going to gain a whole nother family.
For sure. And what I love to hear about that is, and Dave, you mentioned it, right? The best teams are always coach fed, but player led, right? And those momentary lapses, if you can get the right people in there, they become sustainable, right? And I love to hear the way that you guys are going about it. It does my heart well to know that there are coaches out there like y'all that are kind of doing it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, it's that personal, and that's such a key thing. And any coaches, I know there's plenty of coaches that are listening, but coaches that are listening, it's really, really important that you end up getting, making sure that you're staying on top of it and making sure. Talk about leadership, though, because the culture is good, but you have to create it with leadership. How important is it to develop those leaders?
We take it?
Yeah, go for it.
Again, it's we're, as you said, we're John, we're both young in this profession, and the leadership, developing leaders really hasn't come to the forefront to me until the last few years. I think development of leaders, a lot of people say, this guy's a good leader, that guy's a good leader coming to high school, but I still think you have to develop them and you have to work to develop them. And, like I mentioned before, the one thing that I've done in my part on the defensive side is that we have those 9 leaders that every single week we talk about different leadership skills, about adversity, how to handle situations, expectations, reality, how to think, how to go about things. And like Brandon just mentioned, the best teams are player led, and that you as a coach have to develop that. Now you can't, on our defensive side, we have 49 young men on our defensive side. I'm not going to reach every one of them. They're not going to listen to me all the time. I know that. And there's some things I say, it's going to go in one ear, out the other. But what you can do is you can help develop the guys that are important to your program, that are the great leaders that you help develop. And they can be saying that to the other guys on your defense. And those guys may listen to them. And if you can reach one of them, that's a plus. Yeah. And the whole thing is you want to reach as many as you can. You're not going to reach all of them, but you're going to try your hardest and you work your ass off to do it. And I think, getting those guys to buy into the leadership roles. And we, I'm fortunate enough that we have 9 incredible leaders. And that's going to, you see, our mark on defense going up every single year because our leaders get better and better and better. And that's just doesn't happen. You have to work for it. You have to find different ways to lead, and different ways, not only to lead, but to have them learn, because every leader learns different too, right? You have to find ways to, it's just not sitting in a meeting room and handing out information. It's talking to them. It's letting them talk. It's going out to eat with them and having some dinner with them, breaking bread with them so they feel comfortable. But I think it's so important to the success of a program on and off the field is the way your leaders lead. And, I think, one thing that I've learned too is everyone is a leader in their own way. And there's some bad leaders as well. And, you have to acknowledge it, you have to see it, and you have to try to teach them as well, because there's leaders pulling each direction on every single team.
Absolutely.
Pulling a positive way, leaders pulling a negative way. And the thing you got to do is you got to right that ship and try to teach and help them learn. That's
a great point. Really good point. Traci, what are your thoughts on leadership there and how important it is for the program?
No, it's extremely important. I think that's something that we actually really sat down and talked about, because we have an amazing leader on our team. We have a few for sure, but one that has been a captain the last few years, and she's about to graduate. And one of the things that we were talking about is that although she was the sole captain in our spring season, there were so many other leaders, good and bad, but a lot of good leaders, and leading in different ways. We have people who lead just by their performance, people that lead vocally, people that just lead by doing the right things all the time, like giving relentless effort during practice. And so we sat down as a staff with our sports psychologist, and we're like, we need to really teach and identify these different styles of leadership, and and what it means to lead in all these different ways. And so that's something that we've been instilling throughout the season, is kind of teaching the younger generation like that it's okay that you're not a vocal leader, because you're giving, relentless effort every single practice. And that is another way to lead. And just kind of going through different scenarios with them to prepare them for situations that they may come in. Because next year, with this year, we're a veteran team, and next year we're gonna lose a few people. And so it's about teaching the younger generations of our program how important this role was in this class, and how important it's going to be in the classes to come.
Yeah. And, one of the things, Traci, to add to what you just said, that's really critical is it's going to be different. You're wearing different hats as a leader. Sometimes you're not always going to be pushing them. Sometimes you have to pull them. Sometimes, like you said, you might not be that person who's going to be vocally pushing, but that pulling by just demonstrating, I'm going to outwork everybody in practice today with that relentless effort Dave was talking about. And now you're either going to come with me or I'm just going to leave you. But one way or the other, I'm taking off, and you can join me if you'd like. And if you do, it's going to raise everybody up. But if you don't, guess what? I'm not slowing down for you. I'm going to still keep going with that relentless effort. And it's such a really, really critical piece to it. There's a great quote about, leaders comfort the disturbed and disturb the comforted. And it's really one of those things, is there's two sides to it. It's not always going to be raw. Sometimes you got to, as a player on a team, get in somebody's face and challenge them, because that's the only way that they're going to respond. And sometimes maybe it's not even when, a coach, maybe it would be good for a coach to do it, but it would be great if a player did it. And you really see the benefit of that from that standpoint. So just in the last couple of minutes here, I want to ask you all a question, because both of you now have started your coaching careers, got some years under your belt, and you both have talked about how much you've learned. And I think that's so key. One of the things, and I know Brandon's kind of thinking the same way, we've known each other for 30 some years, so we kind of can connect and know what the other one's thinking. And I will guarantee you, he is as impressed as I am with the fact that you both are very interested in being as good at your craft as you can possibly be. And you can tell that in the fact that you're talking to sports psychologists, you're learning, you're talking to other coaches that are influencing you still to this point, which is a really good thing. So my question is, if you could go back and talk to each of you, Traci, you go back and talk to yourself before first year, what would you tell? What have you learned now in the first how many years you've been coaching that you wish you had known on day one when you started it?
So many things.
You're like, wait a second, that's part two. Show two.
Yeah, do we have time for that?
That's right.
I think one of the biggest things is I know a very cliche term or phrase is Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither are programs. And so just because, you want everything to happen right now, again, now we're like, everything needs to happen fast. You have to trust the process and be patient and continue to trust your allies and reach out and continue to learn and grow yourself to build the best program that you can. And continuing to learn is I think most important thing. I think my first year, I couldn't tell you that I was as excited to go to convention and talk to people. And, I was very nervous and not very outgoing. And I didn't really understand what it was going to do for me. And now just all I want to do is hear from other people. And I think it's awesome that, our relationship we just happen to be two college coaches. Sometimes I have to tell them to stop being Coach Dave.
That's a lot, actually.
That's a conversation for another time.
Now that is definitely show number 2.
Yeah.
We can do 2 shows on that.
That's right.
But it is awesome to be able to sit down at dinner and just be like, this is what's happening with my team. And this is what we've been doing as a staff. Like, what would you do?
Yes.
And so that like, did I know that that was going to happen over time? I didn't think that we were both going to continue to stay in college coaching, and we love it. And this is our career now. But I mean, it's just another thing, another tool I have in my belt, I guess.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you'd be crazy not to take advantage of that, both of you. Dave, how about you? What are you going back and telling your younger self?
Well, before that, like you said, like I get a lot of inspiration from Traci. So just about like, like even before this year, like I've used her as a tool, just obviously asking her questions, but a lot of it, like from like we spoke about, the sports psychologist aspect. Like, she had it at Colgate, she had it at West Virginia, and I use that as a big crutch through her.
Yeah.
And with her help with that. But if I can go back, I've always been very into football. I've always been like schematically in terms of X's and O's. I've always had a willingness to learn even when I was playing. And I was always very good and wanted to learn and kept learning. And if I would go back and tell myself back in the day, I would tell myself, say, hey, that's not what it's all about. You can learn all that stuff, which is good. And I know it's funny. Again, I'd go back to that James Madison game. When I became a defensive coordinator, we did really poorly against them. And I kept thinking schematically, what do we got to do better schematically? Like, what can we run? What could do that? And it was actually my brother who I was texting. I said, what do I need to do? And my brother is in medical health sales. He has nothing to do with sports. He's a huge sports fans, and Cleveland sports fans. He'll love the shout out with Cleveland Browns, Indians, and Cavs. Yeah, he's a huge wrestling fan too. But he's very good in his profession, very successful. And he said, number one, he said, the first thing you got to do is you got to find ways to galvanize your group. And that's a term that's always stuck out with me over the last 3 years, is you have to find ways to galvanize your guys together, to play for a common purpose, to have whatever their motto is, to play for each other. Because at the end of the day, no matter what you run, if they're not playing hard, if they're not playing together, it doesn't matter. So again, if I would go back in time, I would tell myself, say, hey, that is the most important thing before any of the X's and O's. Make sure, you have a group that is playing for each other, playing with each other, that is galvanized together for a common purpose. And I think that will go further than anything else you'll do.
No, it's really interesting, because I think it's what Traci talked about earlier with that tea time and how important that was. One thing we've learned over the course of all of these shows has been, and we've said it a million times, is, they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. But if you can connect with them as a person first and foremost before the player, Dave, just like you're just talking about, it's so important. And that's that really just jumped off at the page at me when Traci said it about tea time, because what that allows you to do as a coach is get to know that young lady more for who she is, not the volleyball player at WVU, but the person that she is. And now all of a sudden this person has a family and they've got feelings and they have all of these things. And wow, she's just going to be that much more ready to work and compete for you, and I think it helps them after sports, because, both of you guys have been coaching long enough to see players make that transition into the real world. They don't all become pros, right? And so they make that transition. And we've talked about this on the show, is how often they are just lost because that was their identity. That schedule that you all put together for them every day, they don't know what to do. My son was a perfect example of that. I mean, I think he was lost for a good month or so, because he's like, I don't go to lift at 5:30 in the morning. I don't go do this. I don't go do that. Like, everything was so regimented that there's a transitional period they all go through. So, well, guys, we can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. I mean, it seemed like it just flew by. There were so many things that we wanted to dive into with you guys, but we really do appreciate you all taking the time. I know we're literally, Dave, you guys are getting ready to start. Is it next week? Is that your first game?
Yeah, this upcoming Saturday, September 4th.
Yeah. And Traci, you guys already have 3 under your belt, at least. Well, I guess 6 games technically, right? Under your belt. Did you play 2 series down there in Virginia when you all went down there?
No, just 3 matches.
Just 3 matches. Okay. Yeah. So you guys are both very, very cool for even giving us the time this evening. I know, especially both of you being in coaching, the fact that you probably have very scarce amount of time together. And then you have us 2 knuckleheads that are trying to take up any of that time is probably probably not the thing you wanted to do on Sunday.
We appreciate it, but this is what we do in our spare time. We talk sports.
We talk
So
sports.
That's awesome.
All day long.
Yeah.
I love that, and I want to thank you, and I will be remiss, and I'll be curious off maybe once we're done. I'm very curious to know kind of what you guys are running, Dave, because so my son still plays. He's 13, and I was defensive coordinator, so I'm curious to know what kind of front y'all are putting up there.
Yeah, of course.
Well, I can tell you this, according to Coach Clark, he said the thing he liked about Dave is he's always been a big believer that your base defense needs to be your best defense. I read that in the article. And so hopefully that's still the case at Robert Morris, that base defense is the best defense right now. So that's good.
Of course.
All right, guys. Well, we can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. And definitely, I think the listeners will get a lot out of this one.
Well, thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Want to provide feedback or stay up to date with the show? Visit our Instagram page at Mental Advantage Podcast, or you can send us an email at podcast@mentaladvantage.net. To have John Cullen work with you or your team, please write to him at john.cullen@mentaladvantage.net. Thanks for listening to today's episode.